I call Ian Lees-Galloway.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I'd like to, since this is the committee stage, have a close look at Part 1 of the Accident Compensation Financial Responsibility and Transparency Amendment Bill, starting at Clause 4, because actually this bill is before Parliament partly because we are coming to the end of the transition phase from the old pay-as-you-go system to the full funding system. And I've heard a lot of politics from the Minister with her previous contribution. But actually, if we get down to it, the reason we have this legislation is because we now have to address some of the matters that arise because we had a transition period where technically, if you wanted to say it, for close to 15 years, actually more than 15 years, ACC has been technically insolvent. But we're now coming to the end of that transition period where full funding is now just going to be the norm from here on in. So what Section 4 actually does is repeal the definition of fully funded out of the interpretation clause, and actually a lot of the words that were in the interpretation clause are now in 166A, Principle 1. That the cost of all claims under the levied accounts are to be fully funded by meeting the outstanding claims liability in respect of the claims by offsetting an adequate level of assets to fund the cost of those claims. So rather than being a new concept or something that we've been aiming towards, which we have been for 15 or 16 years, this is now going to be the norm. And so, putting aside all the politics that I heard in the Minister's contribution, that's actually one of the reasons why we need this legislation, and I acknowledge that. One of the other reasons we need this legislation is that for the last few years we have had an issue with overcharging of levies. And I heard the Minister say, I think, and I'm pleased that the Minister said, that the government is aiming for each account to be funded between 100 and 110%, which that sounds good. Actually, if anything, I might have been prepared to be a little bit more flexible than that, maybe up to 120%. If we're going to make sure we've got stability over time, actually 100 to 110 is a little tight, and perhaps the consultation will come back and say maybe we need room up to 120. So I'm comfortable with that. But some of the accounts are funded over 140%. So the Minister says that the idea that it's not wrong, Minister, it's in the ACC's annual report. So go and have a look at the annual report. If you haven't read it, Minister, go and read the annual report, and the Minister will find that some of the accounts are funded 140%. So if the Minister needs evidence that the charges have been too high over the last few years, there it is. The Minister herself says that the range should be 100 to 110%. I'm prepared to be a little bit more flexible than that and say maybe we go to 120%. So the Minister is now advising members opposite, so that the Select Committee Chair has a response to this. That's interesting. And so actually the evidence is there that there has been overcharging. So we agree that we need under 166B2A a target level or band for funding of each account. Absolutely we do, because that's been far too loose over the last few years. And so the upshot of that being too loose is it's been too easy for the government to set the levies much, much higher than what they needed to be. And that's where Sue Moroney's proposed amendment on Supplementary Order Paper number 123 comes in. Because what Sue Moroney is trying to achieve here, we think, is what the original intention of the legislation is. And it's simply about making it absolutely clear that when considering the public good, when setting the levies, the public good means the public interest with regard to reducing injury and accidents. Because for the last couple of years anyway, we've heard the argument made, Judith Collins made this argument in a cabinet paper, which is publicly available, Mr Chairman.
Ian Lees-Galloway.
The argument has been made that the public good includes getting the government's books into surplus. That is exactly the argument that has been made up until now. And so, whilst we appreciate that the mechanism under 166B2A will allow more transparency, it will require the government and the corporation to focus on setting levies that are appropriate for the band that is set. We think that if you put that hand in hand with the definition of public good that Sue Moroney sets out on her supplementary order paper, it makes it absolutely clear. People and businesses can have absolute faith that the legislation that the government and the corporation is working under is designed to ensure that nobody is paying, importantly, too much for their levies, or for that matter, that we're setting levies too low. We agree. We have to have a long-term approach to this. There's nothing about Sue Moroney's SOP that detracts from having a longer view or a mid-term view about what the financial performance of ACC might be. Yes, absolutely, it can be volatile. In fact, the volatility and the fact that the global financial crisis affected ACC's investments just as much as it affected everybody else's investments helped create that supposed gap in the funding that the National Party played up so much. Yes, there is volatility. Although the ACC is one of the best performing investment operations in the country. It proves that the public sector can actually be very good financial managers, alongside the superannuation fund, two of the best performing funds in the country. But we agree with the government on that. What we're saying is just make it a little bit stronger. Make it a little bit stronger so that we can't possibly get into the situation that the government can't even be accused. If the government thinks we're wrong, remove the opportunity for anyone to accuse them of using the ACC to get the government books back into surplus by including the definition of public good and the definition of public interest, which would be added under Section 6D. Clause 330, also on Sue Moroney's supplementary order paper. So what we're actually trying to do is work with the government here to make sure this legislation not only does what it's supposed to do, but is also seen to do what it's supposed to do and gives businesses and other levy payers confidence in the accident compensation system. Because what people expect is that they will pay a fair levy and in return they'll get fair compensation and fair treatment. And at the moment, people feel like they're paying an unfair levy, they're paying far too much, that people are being denied compensation and they're being denied treatment as well. So this is about ensuring that people have confidence and faith in ACC. And I would have thought that would be something that both sides of the House would want to support. So, sir, I absolutely commend Sue Moroney's supplementary order paper to the House, and I encourage members to support it. And if members have any concerns about it, I encourage them to raise that with us so that we can have that conversation through this committee stage and actually alleviate any fear that the government members might have, because we just want to make sure this bill does what it's supposed to do and to give people confidence in the ACC.
Mr. Chairman.
I call Poto